committee, especially all the members in the public gathered this evening. My name is Councillor Peter Clark, and I am the chair of this committee and, surprisingly, will be chairing this meeting. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. And please can I ask you also that any questions are kept brief and to the point. And I would remind ward councillors to sit separately from the committee while applications in their ward are being discussed and voted on by the committee. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence and any substitutions. Kim.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Coburn, Councillor MacLeod and Councillor Beeman is substituting.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. I would ask members of the committee to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of June as published on the Council's website as a correct record of this meeting. Are we agreed? Thank you. Declarations of interest is item 3. Kim.
None received prior to the meeting, Chair.
Do we have any from the chamber? No. I'll move to item 4. Questions by members of the public. I can advise the committee we have no questions submitted by members of the public this evening. So moving to item 5 on the agenda, questions from members. And I can advise we have not received any questions from members either. So I will move to item 6, which refers to relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting. So I will ask the executive head of the planning department to update the committee on any changes.
Committee, there are no changes, but just one thing to report. The council responded to a government consultation on how to speed up the decision-making process in DM. That consultation response is online. The submission date was Monday. Happy to send you a link if you'd like to see what our response was.
Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda are the appeals decisions. We have five pages of appeal decisions, and they are there effectively to give members the opportunity to look at how the planning inspectorate view planning policy, so they can be quite useful. Do members have any questions on these appeals decisions? No. We now, excuse me, move on to the main part of this committee, which is the applications subject to public speaking. The first application is WA 2023/0276, land at Nicholsfield, Churt Road, Hindhead, which is a change of use of the field to community recreation space, of allotments, open space, and a community orchard with a new vehicular access and car park. The officer is Simon Dunlewin, and I will hand over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to try and get this screen share going, which is here. So just bear with me for a second or two. Yeah, I think we're in. It's up there. Apologies for the delay. This is Nicholsfield. The chair has just described the description of the proposal, which is for a change of use for a community recreation space, allotments, open space, community orchard, a new vehicular access and a car park for 12 parking spaces, including one disabled space. The application is submitted by a charitable trust in the late Nichols Charity Trust that proposes to contribute or make a donation of this site for community use. This is the site location plan on the screen, which sits to the south side of Churt Road, on the edge of Beacons Hill settlement. The aerial photograph, the satellite image, shows clearly where it sits in amongst the edge of the settlement of Beacons Hill. This is an aerial view from the north, looking south towards the site. You can just see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's just moving along the frontage along Churt Road here. This is the site, approximate site boundary. It's just an open field, no history of agricultural use at all. And this is an alternative view from the south. There are some mature trees within the site. It's got a very dense foliage around the border, the boundary of the site itself, that conceals it from views from neighboring sites. You can see it forms a very dense tree screening. The proposal itself, as you can see on the screen now, the allotments would be focused towards the western end of the site. The rough distance from Churt Road is 50 meters from the access point, which is along the north here. And the bulk of the site, around 90% of the site, is to be retained with new orchard planting, grassed areas, and general open space use. I would liken it to a mini Sang, if you like. But the car parking area, as you can see, will run directly to the south, close to the access point on Churt Road. The surface of the car park is to be in grasscrete. The remainder of the site will be largely laid to grass, with some ornamental tree planting as a replacement compensation for loss of a couple of trees, as you saw earlier in the image here. So this is roughly where the car park is going to be. And what we have is exactly as you see it. It is a community use proposal. The allotments are proposed following the applicant's consultations with Hazelmere Town Council, because there is a shortage of allotments in the area. So they've included allotments as part of the proposal. And it's not unknown to have allotments in green spaces. So it will contribute to the green infrastructure in the borough, and it's policy compliant as set out in the report. The access point, there is an existing access point in this area here, which looks like this from the road, and this gated access will be closed off. So the main access will be, as you see it, towards the western end of the site in this area, which I'm trying to show it to you, but the cursor is not moving as I wish it to move. The street, the existing site frontage, you can see the dense foliage, and part of it is already enclosed by timber fencing and natural hedging. So it's a completely enclosed site. So the visibility into the site with the replacement planting should limit any exposure of the allotments as proposed. And there has been concern expressed about the impact of the site from local residents on nature, the highway impact, and also additional amenity impacts from noise and comings and goings, etc. These are all addressed in the report, Chair. In terms of the highway concerns expressed by local residents, the Highway Authority at Surrey County Council have spent over a year looking at this case, and they've inspected the site. They've had a road safety audit undertaken by their experienced team of highway engineers, and that has all been reviewed and assessed, and the conclusion is that there will be minimal highway safety impact from this proposal. And the highway engineer at Surrey County Council is satisfied that the proposal is acceptable, subject to conditions, and these are all listed at the end of the report and included. Surrey Wildlife Trust have also considered the impact of the proposal on natural habitat, which was another concern from local residents. And they're happy that there will be sufficient preservation of nature and additional habitat creation, and subject to conditions that they have also recommended, the impact on nature is acceptable. So I'm just going to show you here where the access point is and the visibility displays on the final access drawing that the Highway Authority considered. And this is tied to a condition that they implement this scheme. And some additional overhead shots of the site, which gives a clearer view perspective in terms of its context on the settlement edge of Beacon Hill. This is the actual site, the field that we're talking about. And as I said earlier, some of the mature trees within the site will be retained. Most of the boundary trees will be retained. Our tree officers carefully considered the arboricultural impact assessment and the tree survey. The tree officers also satisfied that the scheme is acceptable, notwithstanding that, as I said earlier, that it's largely an open field retained with orchard planting. So effectively, it's compatible with what's in the natural environment. So I'll finish off with some of the closer overhead views, just to show you the overhead along Church Road frontage. So just as a point, I should emphasize that the proposed access is not directly opposite any of the existing accesses to existing properties on the north side of Church Road. So overall, Chair, we are recommending approval subject to conditions, but also a Section 106 legal agreement that would tie the charity to make sure that they maintain and manage the site properly, and that will be a legal agreement that's recommended. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for that, Simon. Before the committee can deliberate on this, we have 5 speakers, and the 5th being the ward member, Councillor Davidson. And by convention, you'll be speaking last. The first speaker is Mr. Tim, now I hope I pronounced this, is it Wilkie? Tim Wilkie? It is indeed. You have, like all speakers, you have 4 minutes from when you start to speak. The microphone is switchable on the console by the middle button at the bottom.
It's been some time since I've been in the chamber, I have to say. Chairman and councillors, good evening. I've been asked to represent the 31 local community objectors. I'd like to start with the famous quote, "Democracy is a slow process of stumbling to the right decision instead of going straight forward to the wrong one." The architect submitted this revised application in mid-December 23, was made available on the planning portal 5 days later before Xmas. The application was on the HDC planning agenda on the 22nd of December and considered on the 4th of January, and no objection was agreed. But this was without the benefit of the most extensive officers' reports, nor any local consultation. Hazelmere Town Council did qualify no objection subject to highways matters, and in particular a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Councillor Carter has been campaigning for many years with public meetings, residents' petitions and lobbying for a speed reduction and on this particular dangerous piece of road. The 30 mph request has not been forthcoming and the inherent dangers remain and could be exacerbated according to SEC Highways recent road safety audit, November 23. That being the case, if HTC still have serious highways concerns, it must be presumed that the no objection falls to an objection on highway grounds. Since the HTC consideration, we, the local community, can now, some 17 months later, formally express our serious concerns, having considered the offices and all other statutory reports. Highways. The road safety audit was conducted for the original and used for this application between the 8th and 24th November 21. This was shortly after the nation was recovering from COVID restrictions being lifted. These results do not reflect the true position of the current day-to-day traffic movements. The transport statement carried out in 21 by RGP Consulting Engineers on behalf of the applicants includes an automatic traffic counter, data relating to the original application, and importantly at the existing access point opposite Link's house, which is also owned by the Trust, and not the proposed new access point. It's old and irrelevant data and should be disregarded. The road safety audit carried out by Surrey County Council earlier this year was providing recommendations for safer access into proposed development access and uncontrolled pedestrian crossing compromises the vehicle safety of the residents and of the visitors to the existing properties, being Loxley, Hazelwood and Penfold. It's all very well standing on the edge of the pavement looking up and down the road, but if you're in a car waiting to pull out, the driver's sight line is approximately 2 meters further back. The new audit needs to be undertaken in consultation with the residents, please. This part of the road is used as a route to Farnham and the M23 and as a diversion when Hindhead Tunnel is closed. The width of the road is not sufficient for lorries. You'll have some photographs in front of you taken in the last few days where you see these lorries straddle the white line. A lorry requires 3.36 meters of width. At the site, the carriageway is less than 2.7 meters. The road safety audit of November 23, section 3.3 identified that the applicant's highway proposals meant that a road width reduces the existing carriageway to 1.53 meters. This would create a pinch point for coaches, buses, trucks, forcing them out into the centre of the road. The report also identified in section 3.2 inadequate visibility displays that created a risk of pull-out collisions incurring. Section 3.1 goes further by saying could result in near-end shunt collisions. The HGV is currently traversing the carriageway, as you can see in the photos at this very point of the new access. There is also at the end of the letter of the planning officer a plan detailing how to overcome the problem. Our thanks goes to Councillor Harmer, who made this suggestion as a possible resolution to the safety problem. It resolves many issues, including safer entry and exit from the site, a school and local buses to operate safely. The current bus stop at the side of the applicant's site was removed at the danger of the stakeholders. The scheme would also help the local houses when entering and exiting their drives. In addition to the new road safety audit, we would request highways to meet with the residents. There remain substantive highways issues. Biodiversity, although not a statutory consultee, we consider that with the water problems in the area, houses have to install pumps to draw water from the mains, and the orchards and allotments needing water, the southern water should have been consulted. Will a new spur be required to cross the road? Will there be provision regarding pesticides that are required in the orchard weed killer? I'm running out of time. Where from here? We would like to see the committee agreeing this to go as a DM19 into the local plan, please. A detailed section 106 agreement in consultation with the local members and representatives and for this proposal to be referred back to committee for further and better particulars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkie. The next speaker is a Mr. Michael Parham. You also have 4 minutes, Michael, from when you start to speak.
Good evening. My name is Mike Parham from Broadgrove Planning, and I'm the agent acting on behalf of Douglas and Phyllis Nicholl Charitable Foundation Trust to support the application being considered before committee today. The application before you follows extensive discussions with Hazelmere Town Council, Waverley Borough Council Planning Department and the associated statutory consultees. The land known as Nichols Field was left in trust to Douglas and Phyllis Nichol Foundation Trust, with the will of Mr. Frank Douglas stating that the land may be left for the provision of facilities for recreation or other leisure time occupation, provided these are in the interests of social welfare. The proposed allotments were suggested by Hazelmere Town Council during a meeting in October of 2021, who stated they had 97 people on the waiting list as of May 2024. And they have also showed an interest in managing the allotments should the application be successful. The officer has clearly outlined the proposals can be considered before committee today. The rationale for the application is to provide recreation space for the community, which facilitates wider access to the site in line with the wishes of Mr. Frank Douglas and his will. The space is currently underutilised, and the proposal is to retain, enhance, and increase the usability of the space, and it will provide recreation facilities which are more accessible for the wider community for leisure and informal recreation. The provision of allotments and community open space will encourage physical activity, the growth of fresh produce, and promote healthy lifestyles, which signal a clear benefit of the proposal. National planning policy recognises the importance of accessible open space and community facilities in achieving healthy and inclusive communities. The Surrey Hills Management Plan also supports the measures to increase the usability of the space for all members of the society. The proposals have also considered highway safety and access for pedestrian and vehicle users. The new access will provide a safer entrance and egress from the site and also includes new road markings, a pedestrian crossing and the management of vegetation in order to achieve appropriate visibility displays. The arrangement has been agreed with Surrey County Council Highways, and the existing access to the east of the site is considered to be unsafe for those wishing to access Nichol Field. With regard to ecology, the application follows extensive correspondence with Surrey Wildlife Trust and ecological surveys. The Wildlife Trust have reviewed all evidence submitted with the application and are satisfied that the long-term management of the site and replacement planting will secure the required habitat enhancements. I now wish to address some of the concerns which have been raised by residents throughout the course of the application. The proposed parking provision consisting of 12 spaces is the recommended number of spaces required to support the expected demand of the 24 allotments. The parking will be gated, locked from dusk until dawn to ensure the site is secure and safe and designated for the purposes it's intended to be used for. Concerns have also been raised by residents with regard to the potential for future housing development. I would like to reiterate that the proposal before committee today is for community allotments, open space and an orchard and associated access, and there is no intention from the trustees to submit an application for residential development. With regard to drainage matters have been agreed by the LFA and are secured under appropriately worded conditions. The application has come forward following positive engagement with officers of the local planning authority and the town council, and all technical matters have been considered in detail and agreed with the respective consultees. The proposal will deliver a multifunctional recreational open space that promotes public health, sustainability, social inclusion and community well-being. The range of public benefits the scheme will deliver is wide-ranging and will contribute positively to the area. I kindly ask members to support the provision of allotments and recreational open space, which is in keeping with the will of Mr. Douglas and will be an asset to the local community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. That was perfectly timed. The third speaker is Mr. Robert Elliott. Nope. Well, Mr. Elliott has missed his opportunity. We go to the fourth speaker, which is a speaker from the Town Council, Councillor Malcolm Carter. I'm sure you've heard it a few times already, but you have 4 minutes from when you start to speak.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. The Hazelmere Town Council Planning Committee voted to support the plan in principle, permitting local residents to use the land as allotments with one condition. Hindhead and Beacon Hill do not have such facilities. Hazelmere Town Council currently manages 3 sites for local people which are oversubscribed with some 70 people on the waiting list. However, the one condition the committee expressed is a serious concern regarding the access and exit to the site. The concerns we have raised are within the access and egress management of the 287, which the entrance is directly on. This part of the road out of Beacon Hill is veritably racetrack for motorcyclists and cars in both directions. 200 yards south of this exit is a major bend, which is blind. 200 yards north is a busy golf club exit, which sees about 300 vehicle movements daily and has had several accidents near misses caused by speeding and overtaking. Surrey County Council has been requested unsuccessfully over several occasions in recent years to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles an hour due to these accidents and near misses that occur. And I note from the previous speaker that they're looking for a pedestrian crossing. Well, you won't get a pedestrian crossing off a 40-mile-an-hour zone, which Surrey will tell you. Therefore, our support for the planning can only be supportive unless there is a study of the speed, a serious reconsideration of the road markings and signage to protect this entrance and the many others that are within 200 yards of the proposed exit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. We move on to the ward councillor, who is Councillor Jerome Davidson. Oh, I beg your pardon. Are you speaking?
I think Councillor Spencer would like to speak first.
Indeed.
Can I confirm you both wish to speak?
Yes.
Well, normally it's one, but at the discretion of the chair, and as we're missing one speaker already, I don't see any harm. So who's going first? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you have a difficult balance to draw in front of you. Allotments are generally viewed positively, and I acknowledge that there are a number of policies that favour this application, but there are also a number that suggest the reverse. As you've heard, many of the objectors have raised concerns over the loss of biodiversity and the intrinsic character and beauty of this part of the countryside. They point to paragraph 189 of the NPPF and to the policies in the local plan, which say the great weight, and I quote, should be given to conserving and enhancing landscape in national landscapes. In particular, they point to the comments of the Surrey Hills advisor, which was very, very clear. He said, I do not consider this as a suitable location for allotments, a car park, and because of the harm to nature. Yet, this objection from a consultee whose views should be given great weight is dismissed in just 3 lines on the bottom of page 18, with no meaningful attempt to address the concerns he raised. Now, a planning authority may choose to disregard the advice of a statutory consultee, but they must provide clear and compelling reasons for doing so in their decision. I don't see that here. As Mr. Wilkie has articulated, where is the assessment of the use of pesticides and bonfires that are endemic to allotments? Where is the assessment of water usage for the allotments and the orchard? Was the water company ever consulted? Without these, the officer's statement that the proposals meet the requirements of the NPPF and the local plan is, in my view, just not credible. Members, I'd also ask you to consider very carefully the comments on access and highway safety made by Mr. Wilkie and the objectors, and indeed by Councillor Carter for Hazelmere Town Council. The report references the Highway Authority advice and the road safety audit, but it skates over the fact that residents have asked some serious questions about the accuracy of this audit, particularly about the road width and the fact that heavy goods vehicles already have to straddle the central line at the exact point of the proposed curb build-out. Members, you have all can see the exact example in the handout that we received earlier. Residents have also pointed out that the design speeds used in the RSA come from an ATC survey conducted not only at the old access point, but also at the height of COVID restrictions in 2021. Surely a new accurate ATC survey at the new access point should have been performed. This is a 40-mile-an-hour road, and the proposed narrowing on the bend of Church Road is just an accident waiting to happen. Members, I do think you have valid planning reasons to turn this rather inchoate application down. However, should you be minded to approve it, I believe the field must be given the extra protection afforded by local green space designation under DM19. The officer earlier referred to it being open space, a mini sang, he said. And even the speaker from the developer referenced it as open space. So I hope, if you do choose to approve this application, that you will make this designation a condition, perhaps adding it to the heads of terms agreement for the Section 16 legal agreement. Chair and members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Spence. We now move to the final speaker, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. I fear that a lot of the points which I was going to raise have already been covered. But I would like to add my own personal concern about the safety of the road access, and in particular, the point raised by Councillor Carter, in that a pedestrian crossing, as I understand it, is not permissible in a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. So if that's going to be provided, someone has got to be able to ask Surrey and the highways to agree the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, which Haslemere Town Council has been asking for several years already. And I would ask that, if this is approved by a committee, to be a condition of the application. The other aspects, I think, have been quite adequately covered. It would be nice, as I think we would all like to see, is that land gets opened up and used for the community. Currently, it is a little bit secluded with that somewhat hidden gateway. So it'd be, I would approve certainly of a opening up somehow of that access, but mindful of the fact if it's going to have vehicular access, that needs to be considered very carefully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. We will now move to the discussion on this application, and perhaps we could start by asking if any members have technical questions they'd like to put to the case officer. In that case, do we have our first speaker? Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Like probably a lot of the councillors here, I have a problem with the failure of this to actually talk about highways. Highways have said, this is fine, let's go ahead. As you've heard from Councillor Carter and others, the local people disagree with this, and they are saying that the speed limit should be lowered for safety reasons. So I'm struggling to say whether I obey what I would normally do, that is the highways, because they are the professional people here. Normally we would go along with what highways say. However, there is a strong feeling locally that this will provide accidents because of the speed of the road. and the nature of the vehicles that use it. So yes, like probably others, I'm struggling because I want allotments there. I think it's a very good use for it. It's much better use under the climate rules rather than perhaps housing or other things. And of course, if it was housing, you'd probably have more traffic coming and going. So in fact, I think allotments would be a very good use for it. There has been suggestions put up that perhaps some conditions could be put on it to make this a much safer exit and access. And I think that's the route I would prefer if it's proposed. So at the moment, I'm like to listen to the other speakers before I make my mind up. But I think if we can put some sort of condition on it, on that access, I would love to agree with it. Thank you.
We have councillor Keane and then councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have listened very carefully to what the residents have had to say, and also to the gentleman that was acting for the owners. I too would like to see allotments there. I think they're very healthy, they're good, they're, you know, very integrating with people, but I'm concerned about the traffic also. I'm also very concerned about a build-up being done on that road. We all know those people that use it, and you know, we all use that road, that it can be quite dicey at times. You know, cars rush round there at more than 40 miles an hour, I have to say. And especially if it's a big lorry or something coming round there, it can be very dangerous. And I do agree with the residents on that. I am really surprised that Surrey's talking about putting a pedestrian crossing on that road at a speed of 40, because normally it's 30. I would like to ask that Surrey County Council relook at this, because I am so concerned about the safety of residents, and certainly with the allotment holders with that access. So I would like to ask that Surrey County Council relook at this, relook at the speed reduction before anything else is done, because I think that is the most important thing that we need here. So I am in favour of the allotments, but I'm not in favour of it while there is this concern over Surrey County Council. And I think they've dithered over it long enough. And I think a decision has to be made as to whether the access is right or wrong, and also whether there should be a pedestrian crossing and a curb build out. So I am concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it'd be a good idea if I asked the head of planning what powers or what authority this committee has to ask Surrey Highways to have another look at this.
So members, ultimately you are the decision makers, so you could choose to defer for further comment from Surrey Highway, but I would like to draw your attention to the content in the report that reads that the application is supported by a transport statement and access plan. The County Highway Authority considers that the proposal will not have a material impact on highway safety, and that the proposed access and parking provision are satisfactory. A road safety audit has been undertaken by the County Road Safety Team to assess the pedestrian crossing stroke access arrangements. Additional representation by the community on the road safety audit and transport matters, my computer's just gone off at that point, apologies, have been considered by the County Highway Authority. The County Highway Authority is satisfied that the amended site access proposal will provide safe and suitable access to the site for all users. So members, I would suggest that is a fairly definitive position, and that a road safety audit has been carried out by the county surveyor. The county surveyor has also considered the concerns raised by the residents and has provided that position statement, which is, in my view, a fairly robust position for the county to be taking. So members, whilst it is open to you tonight to defer this and ask the county surveyor to repeat his advice, that advice is before you this evening to base your decision on.
Thank you, Claire. There we have it. There's obviously a disagreement on the safety issues, but this local planning authority has to take account of what the Highways Authority provides to them. So I'll move now to Councillor Welton.
Thank you. A little bit of background. This is now the fourth time that I've been in a discussion around this issue, because it twice came before the Town Council, which I was planning committee, which I was chairing. On the first occasion, we welcomed the idea of the allotments, but we voted to object on the basis of safety grounds. It then came back to us as a revised application with amendments to the some of the circumstances, and we believed then that they had taken account of our objections, and we then voted to support it on the basis that the neighbourhood really does need allotments. That was some time ago. More recently, we had a request from members of the community to revisit it. We thought it was not appropriate to try to have another vote, but we did invite the residents in for a discussion. We had a fairly frank discussion. So this is now the fourth time I'm looking at it. I think, having heard all the arguments from the members of the community and the local Haslemere councillors, the local Waverley councillors, and also having listened to the officers, and I really appreciated the contribution by the officer this evening and by the head of planning. I think there are three key considerations. The first one, which has not been discussed, is that this was left to the community in a will for the use of the community for recreation purposes. And I think that's important, because if you look at the location as it is now, it's not particularly benefiting the community. I'm not aware that the community as a whole is even conscious that it has been left to them for their use. There is a single access point, but pedestrian access, it doesn't look like it's available to the community. So I don't believe it is at present being used for the purpose of the will. And that's important. I think the argument in favour of allotments is important. It's clear that the community does want allotments because we have a waiting list. And I think allotments would be immensely valuable. On the other hand, we have heard from a number of speakers that there are very real concerns about traffic. And it's at this point that I think that the officer's contribution was particularly helpful, because he points out that Surrey Highways have spent a long time considering this. And on that basis, I think Surrey Highways' final recommendation is to support it subject to conditions. And I think that is key. I think we need to respect that. I think we need to respect the observations by our head of planning. So my personal view on this application now, weighing together all the assorted considerations, is that we should support it subject to conditions. I said earlier there are three considerations. I think there is in fact a fourth one which I've not considered closely, and that is the one raised by Councillor Spence in terms of biodiversity. I think there are conflicting arguments on that, and I have no opinion on balance. But my recommendation for this agenda item is to support it subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. We now move to Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's sort of thrown up some queries for me. People have told us that something was looked at during 2021 during lockdown. Was that when the road safety audit was actually carried out? If it was, surely we could ask for a more up-to-date road safety audit with the present day traffic on there. It looks like Surrey Highways have spent a year looking at this already, and I'm a little confused really how they think a pedestrian crossing can be on a 40-mile-an-hour road. Is anybody in the room able to tell me if that is possible? Can you have a pedestrian crossing on a 40-mile-an-hour road? because that seems to be a query that everyone keeps bringing up. I noticed there were some other bits and pieces here. People were worried about the impact of the agricultural machinery. I mean, all that could be dealt with under conditions that people can't take agricultural machinery in or something. And should it be left as an organic allotment? So I've just got more and more queries actually that are coming up here, even though we've got quite a detailed explanation from the officer, but it does still leave some holes, I fear.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. Some of the concerns you raised there will be covered in the Section 106 agreement, which is a legal agreement, and that will lay down the management terms and conditions of running the allotment. So that's something that will be dealt with. But going back to Councillor Weldon's subject to conditions quote, can I refer back to Claire? Because we do have some conditions there, which it might be helpful to refer to.
So members, there are a number of proposed conditions that include sort of normal ones around accordance with approved plans, condition around the retention of trees, and agricultural details. There's a condition requiring the proposed access and pedestrian access between the site and Church Road should be constructed, so the new access constructed, and then the further condition is that the development hereby approved shall not be open to the public unless or until the existing access has been closed. So again, to ensure that there is safe access and that there is no conflict between the new access and the existing access being retained. The further condition requiring the laying out of parking on the site to ensure that there's no issues of vehicles parking elsewhere causing highway safety issues. Further condition around a construction transport management plan, again to ensure that during the creation of the allotments and public the open space, there's no obstructions in the highway resulting from traffic coming to and from the site in connections with that work. It's a condition requiring cycle stands to promote cycling and walking, surface water drainage conditions, and a landscape ecological management plan to ensure that issues around biodiversity, net gain, the existing habitat and ecology within the site are not impacted. There's a construction environmental management plan condition, no external lighting condition, and a condition requiring a pedestrian and vehicle entrance gate to the facilities from Churt Road. So we've got a total of 14 planning conditions proposed on this application. And Chair, through you, if I could just respond to the question that Councillor Gale has raised about the traffic survey that was carried out in 2021. As you would expect, the development world didn't stop during COVID, and a lot of work was done on various schemes up and down the country that required traffic surveys in 2020 and 2021. So the survey work would have used average data and other known data together with national trends on impact on overall traffic caused by COVID to actually produce figures that would be the normal traffic flows in a post or pre-COVID world. So with all survey work, and that's something that was challenged and examined quite hardly by all planning authorities at the time. and developers in how they put forward a robust survey that, demonstrated what the traffic was in the absence of the normal traffic flows because of the impact of COVID on flows across the highway network.
Thank you, Claire. We have one more speaker, Councillor Rivers.
Thank you very much. Well, as I see this, this is a gift to the community of an open and unused field, a gift to a community that has a waiting list of 70 for allotments. This is a gift of 24. Of course, there are issues with the road and access, but nobody is wanting that heavy vehicle, as shown in our photograph, to not be on the road, because presumably that's heading to some householders who are having work done. Of course, the hierarchy of the road has changed fairly recently, so that should people want to walk or cycle or take their horses to the allotment, they would have priority over that vehicle anyway. I simply cannot see any issues whatsoever with this application.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that wants to speak? If not, I'll move to the recommendation. Oh. Councillor Spence, would you like to come back and make some further points?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I believe I'm entitled to have another thing. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points, if I may. Firstly, I'd just like to thank members for what I think has been a very mature discussion on some difficult issues. It was raised whether we could defer this application because of the highways issues. And you will have heard the Assistant Director's comments on that. I would just add the one thing, though, in terms of the ATC, the traffic survey, it's not just that it was done during COVID that is an issue, but it was done in the wrong place. It was done based on the original access point, not on the current access point. And I think that really brings that into question, how much you should rely on that. And indeed how much highways should be relying on that. The other point I'd like to make, and I was asking earlier whether this could be classified as a local green space or an open space. And I think all speakers, including the developer, have referenced it as such. I would like to ask if within the discussions, either on the 106 or otherwise, that the developer would commit to supporting any application from the community for this to be classified under the DM19 criteria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Spence. We now move to the recommendation, which is that delegated authority be given to the Assistant Director of Planning to complete a Section 106 legal agreement, and also subject to the conditions 1 to 14 and informatives 1 to 10, permission is thereby granted. Members, please vote using the panel in front. We have 7 for, 2 against and 1 abstention. So the application is granted. So we now move to agenda item 8.2, which is WA 2024-0188, land at Sandylands, Woodlands Avenue in Cranley. The erection of 5 dwellings and associated work following the demolition of an existing dwelling. This application will be presented by the case officer, Sam Wallace.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The next application under consideration at committee is WA 2024-01889. The application seeks permission for the erection of 5 dwellings and associated work following demolition of the existing dwelling Sandallands on Woodland Avenue in Cranley. So Sandallands is within the Cranley settlement area. It's located to the northeast of Cranley. The dwelling sits on a 0.47 hectare plot, which is the largest along the avenue, and comprises a large 2-storey detached dwelling with 3rd floor within a mansard roof. The plot sits to the north of Woodland Avenue, adjacent to Ewhurst Road. The surrounding character, as noted in the Cranley neighbourhood plan, is individual detached houses set in large garden plots from the 1930s to 1970s with grass verges along Woodlands Avenue. Littlemead Brook runs along the northern and western boundary of the site with several TPOs flanking the east, west and north of the site. So this is the front elevation facing Woodlands Avenue. The site is accessed via an existing crossover arrangement. Design as existing is mid-century with large mansard roof at a ridge height of 9.1 metres. You can also get a perspective of the width of the plot from the rear elevation. To the left of the picture is a timber board fencing with the neighbour lost within. Again, fencing with the neighbouring property. All the trees shown in the picture on this boundary, including oaks and holly trees, are TPO'd. So this is looking from the northeast corner of the plot southwards and shows the size of the existing residential curtilage surrounded by a number of protected trees. Site levels, as you can see, are largely flat. And this is a further picture also looking southwards, showing the full extent of the garden at the rear. So Woodlands Avenue is residential in character. These are large detached homes on linear verdant plots. Architectural style is varied with a range of materials present. Roof form includes hipped gable ends and cat slide roofs. Roof tiles include clay, slate and concrete in a mix of different colours. Fenestrations include render, timber, different coloured brick and hanging tiles. This is a varied and non-uniform appearance of properties along the avenue and has particularly informed the design typologies of this scheme. So you can see the proposal would subdivide the site for 5 dwellings with access between the 2 front-facing dwellings with 3 at the rear. As detailed in the officer's report, such plot sizes between 600 square metres and 767 square metres would remain in line with properties on the southern end of Woodland Avenue and remain notably larger than those on Ewhurst Road immediately adjacent. Plots 1 and 2 fronting Woodland Avenue are more traditional in appearance and have been informed by the mid-century appearance of the existing dwelling fronting Woodland Avenue. These include use of materials such as red brick, precast stone detailing and wall hanging tiles with similar proportions. And plots 3, 4 and 5, they are a more contemporary architectural language with clean lines, minimalist form and materials that include buff brick and black timber cladding. This is plot number 3. This is plot 4 and 5 in that same contemporary style looking north up the shared access. This shows the rear gardens of plot 4 and 5 with the smaller first floors to reduce visual bulk. The ridge height of 6.57 metres further reduces prominence. And finally, a closer viewpoint of plot 5 from the shared access. So in terms of the main matters for consideration, in terms of design, as mentioned in the officer's report, the subdivision of the plot as proposed would be acceptable. Sandallands has the largest plot size on Woodland Avenue and therefore is more appropriate for subdivision. This is also a developed settlement location. Plot sizes would still be in line with properties on the southern end of Woodland Avenue, and as a site directly at the bookend of the road. The plot is also read in conjunction with properties along Ewhurst Road, and so is more flexible to change. The sizable separation distances of these rear backland dwellings from Woodland Avenue and modest two-storey height of all three dwellings means that the backland development proposed here would not be materially harmful to the character of the wider street scene. The dwelling typologies proposed would also respect the varied street scene of Woodlands Avenue. On flood risk, the Environment Agency and lead local flood authority do not object, subject to conditions. On trees, the council's tree and landscape officer has stated that the arboricultural detail submitted does demonstrate that the trees can remain viable and recommends soil amelioration measures to mitigate any impact of RPA incursions. Whilst they maintain a concern on light potential and potential for leaf nuisance, as highlighted in the report, the applicant has submitted a daylight survey which shows the two properties of concern, plots 4 and 5, would be highly compliant with BREE guidance. Furthermore, for the reasons outlined in the report, officers are of the view that there would be adequate external amenity space that would not be overly covered by tree canopies that would give rise to material leaf nuisance. On highways and access, the County Highways Authority do not object, subject to conditions. They consider the visibility displays are adequate and have raised no concern on the access arrangements. Parking provision would also be satisfactory. On ecology, Surrey Wildlife Trust have been to site themselves and are satisfied that with appropriate conditions, there would not be harm to protected species. B&G can also be appropriately dealt with by condition and would provide a mix of on and off-site enhancement in line with the biodiversity net gain hierarchy. So overall, with all these matters considered, the report identifies the application would be in accordance with the relevant development plan policies. Officers are therefore recommending that, subject to conditions 1 to 18, the proposal is granted. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Sam. Before we move to the discussion on this application, we have 3 speakers. The first speaker I'd like to call is Mr. Neil Whittaker. I'm sure you've heard me say it already, Mr. Whittaker, but you have 4 minutes from when you start to speak.
Thank you very much. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Neil Whittaker. I'm a Chartered Town Planner, and I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of Woodland Avenue Residents Association, about 25 of whom are here behind me, about the proposed development at Sandylands. The residents would like it known that they are not objecting to the principle of redevelopment at Sandylands. They are not NIMBYs, but are a group of local residents who care deeply about the area in which they live and want to ensure that the development which takes place at the site is the very best that it can be. The character of Woodland Avenue is well established and consists of large detached dwellings within substantial plots, all of which provide significant separation distances to their front and rear boundary lines. Indeed, this prevailing character along Woodland Avenue is specifically recognised within the Cranley Neighbourhood Plan at Character Area 29, which supports the requirements of Policy Cran 3. With these policy requirements in mind, the 2 dwellings located at the front of the site, fronting Woodland Avenue, would sit within plots which do not reflect the existing plot sizes and established street patterns seen within Woodland Avenue. Both dwellings sit directly on their side boundary lines, which visually, within the street scene, gives the impression of an overly cramped form of development, which is not reflective of the well-spaced out character of Woodland Avenue. In addition, having a roadway between these 2 dwellings, which leads to the rear of the site, is an anomalous feature within the street scene. The proposed 3 additional houses on land to the rear would clearly result in backland development, which is not at all reflective of the existing layout and character of Woodland Avenue. In particular, the proposed dwelling on plot 3 appears to have been shoehorned into the proposed redevelopment of the site and sits awkwardly within the established character and layout of the surrounding area. This failure to integrate with its surroundings is exacerbated in terms of its plot size, with its main garden to the side and built development in very close proximity to all the boundaries. The proposed development as a whole fails to respond effectively to its surroundings, results in an overdevelopment of the site, and is contrary to the main requirements of local plan policies TD1 and DM4 and the neighbourhood plan policies CRAN 2 and CRAN 3. Local residents are also concerned that permitted development rights are not proposed to be removed, meaning if approved, buildings and extensions could be built further, eroding the character and layout of the area. Trees are an important character feature of the immediately surrounding area. There are a number of trees on site and adjacent to the southeastern boundary of the site, which are protected by TPOs. In particular, with regard to the protected oak trees at Lostwithen, given the proximity of the proposed dwelling on plot 1, there are considerable concerns about the encroachment of this part of the development into the root protection areas of these trees and the potential impact on their long-term retention, which would be contrary to the requirements of policy DM11. These same issues can be seen with regards to the proposed dwellings on plots 2 and 3, which are also very close to a number of trees around the northern and northwestern boundary of the site. Indeed, the council's own tree and landscape officer has objected to the proposed development and recommended a refusal, stating, and I quote, "I do not consider that the current scheme offers a sustainable relationship. I would suggest that a reduced scheme is likely to have more flexibility over access, position, room layout and fenestration to help overcome this issue." The comments of the council's own expert confirm that the proposal is a clear overdevelopment of the site, and I urge members to consider these views when determining the acceptability of this application. Finally, in terms of highway safety, the new access would cause a reduction in visibility and increased complexity around the junction with Ewhurst Road, is considered to disproportionately affect road users such as cyclists and pedestrians using Woodland Avenue, which is also a designated public footpath, given the regular presence of parked cars, as can be seen within the displayed photos in your packs. A further detailed objection from local resident Mr. Carr, who is an experienced engineer, was submitted to the council on the 3rd of July in response to an email from Sam Goddard, Transport Planning Officer for Waverley, dated the 18th of June 25, setting out that the County Highways response on this application is incorrect in places and not compliant with applicable standards and guidelines. However, it is not clear that all of these matters raised have been properly addressed and considered by the case officer and a response presented to members of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the second of our three speakers, Mr. Chris French.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The site is located in the developed area where the principle of development is acceptable. As confirmed in the officer's report, there's a clear housing land supply shortfall for units of all sizes. The proposed mix of dwellings responds positively to the character of the area, and other windfall sites are likely to be better suited to delivering 1 and 2 bedroom units. This is the largest residential plot on Woodlands Avenue, located at the end of the junction with Ewhurst Road. The size and positioning make it uniquely suitable for subdivision, unlike other smaller plots within the street. It's comparable to the nearby site close to the junction with New Park Road and Ewhurst Road, where a similar subdivision was allowed on appeal at a time when the council did have a 5-year supply. The design has been carefully considered. The 2 units at the front will respect the traditional character of the street. Properties to the rear feature a high quality modern design with minimalist forms, and the materials will be buff brick and timber, which blend the modern with the traditional elements. The buildings at the rear have been designed with modest heights of 6.5 meters and an appropriate separation from the road. They will create visual interest while maintaining the character of the area. The tree officer has raised no objections concerning root protection areas, and an internal daylight and sunlight study has been provided, demonstrating full compliance with the BRE guidance. Additionally, the boundary trees that are on site would provide valuable shading during the summer months. Some trees were removed, but they were not subject to preservation order, and they've been fully addressed in the Biodiversity Net Gain report. The tree officer confirms adequate parking provision. The officer report confirms adequate parking provision, and the access width is sufficient for emergency vehicles and deliveries. Several amendments have been made to the scheme to address the concerns raised by residents. The bin store has been set further back to respect the verge. bedroom windows have been removed from the side of plot 4 to address concerns regarding overlooking to Lostwathen. We take concerns about the potential harm to a badger set very seriously. The applicant confirms that no badger set was removed from the site. This claim was raised by an individual with no supporting evidence. On March 28, 2024, Surrey Police and Peter Eggleton from the West Surrey Badger Group inspected the site and found no evidence of badger activity or illegal works. Due to the objections, Surrey Wildlife Trust, the council's consultee, were invited to the site and took the unusual step of undertaking their own on-site inspection. After reviewing the objections and visiting the site, the trust confirmed that there are no ecological grounds to object to the proposal, including any concerns about badgers. Whilst we understand that badger-related issues can be a motive, the refusal on these grounds would, in our view, be unjustified. The County Highway Authority have confirmed the application is acceptable, noting that visibility displays are improved. The Environment Agency and the Flood Authority are raising no objections. We're confident that all technical matters have been resolved. The development will positively contribute to the area, providing 5 high-quality family homes in a highly sustainable location. It's also important to note that the tilted balance in favour of development applies here. Whilst not needed to make this application acceptable, should harm be identified, it would need to be weighed in a tilted balance in favour of development. We respectfully request the committee to approve this application as it fully complies with the development plan and will provide much needed family homes in a sustainable location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move to the third and final speaker from Cranley Parish Council, and that is Councillor Rosemary Burbridge.
Good evening, councillors, chairman and everyone. It's lovely to be here with you. I'm basing what I'm going to say about the development in the light of Cranley's neighbourhood plan. I didn't know how much I liked it till I actually read it to do this. Paragraph 430. All development should be designed to a high quality, be well proportioned and reinforce and enhance local character that is appropriate to the site's context, including the landscape in which it is set, while making the best use of land available. In the light of this, I do not think that the designs or size of the properties proposed in Woodlands Avenue area either fit in or enhance the area. This does not imply criticism of these properties, just that they do not fit in with the other properties in the road. In the words of the plan, they do not reinforce or enhance the local character of that area of Cranley. 4.32 in the plan. Development must be sustainable, seek to protect the countryside and result in net gain of biodiversity. And 6.3, I'm going to read you, the loss of a large number of trees, ancient woodlands and green fields not only changes the character of the area, but it also has an impact on the well-being and leads to displaced and destroyed wildlife and natural habitats. Furthermore, it has a wider impact on the air and water quality, eradicates natural flood control measures and affects soil conditions. Right, many large trees, to comment on this one, many large trees have already been removed, and this will probably have a significant effect on the flooding when the culverts will not be able to cope, causing the Ewhurst Road to flood. The removal of one large oak tree at the end of Avenue Road in Cranley 10 years ago has caused a non-flood area to have frequent floods. And you should all have a picture of a flood that's been caused since the number of trees there have been cut down. The large garden area of Sandilands is home to much wildlife, possibly badgers. I'm not saying they've got a set, but I saw a lovely picture this afternoon of a badger in somebody's garden. It probably has wandered from its set, but there are frequently badgers walking down Woodlands Avenue. They're not very careful. And they're often seen by residents. Also, When the parish council discussed the development some months ago, they were concerned there was no BAT report. So does this mean there should be no building on the Sandringham site? It is possible some may love the design of the old house and be sad to see it go, the one that's there. I have a little sympathy with this view. I quite like it. But we will realise that this is a good site to develop, and there are ways in which it could be done that are in keeping with the local plan. The front view of the site would be more in keeping with the character of a road if one house was there, as there is at present, and no more than two at the back with larger gardens. If there are larger gardens, the flood risk will be lessened as there will be more ground without concrete covering to absorb water. As you see from the plans, as they exist at present, there is too much ground covered with concrete and much soak away is lost. Most of the nearby homes have enough parking so that cars do not have to be left on the road. I'll go very quickly now. And development must be sustainable, seek to protect the countryside and result in net gain in biodiversity. Can we do it? I was able to look at the site from the next door garden and see a beautiful bluebell field, which is now just a wasteland with no trees in it. It was a wood. Councillors, you've heard many reasons to turn down this application in its present form. Look how many neighbours there are sitting behind me. They are all passionate about their road and want to keep the special character of Woodland Avenue. They are not afraid of development. It's just the proposed scale and development, which would be overdevelopment with the character of the surrounding areas. Sorry, I was over time. Thank you.
Turn the microphone off, please.
Oh, yes, I will. Sorry.
And thank you for speeding up towards the end. I think. Right, members, we now move to the discussion. Can I have a first speaker? Thank you, Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. I think my overriding concern, as with all applications, is that we have a major shortfall in housing allocations. And that is a real problem, because in the absence of sufficient housing allocations, we have to follow the principle that there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development unless there is demonstrable harm. Now, I accept and understand the concerns of the residents and of the parish council, but on the basis of what we have seen, I do not see that there is demonstrable harm in this application. The simple fact is that across Waverley as a whole, huge chunks of the borough are designated either AONB, National Landscape, or Greenbelt, or land which is in some other way protected. On that basis, the only way I believe that we are going to come anywhere close to delivering what we need to deliver is by using, where we can, infill developments, which is what this application does. I understand that the residents would prefer a smaller infill proposal, but we are not really in a position here of dictating what developers should do. We have to consider the application as it is. And on that basis, my belief is that we need to support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weldon. Councillor Spence, then Councillor Rubini.
Thank you, Chair. I would endorse virtually everything that Councillor Weldon has said. I think given all the arguments and yeah, I can understand the arguments of residents, the tilted balance is a major concern. And as he said, this is a step towards fulfilling that housing requirement. The only comment I would make, and I'd like to just have it recorded, is the disappointment that under the new NPPF framework, we are not allowed to require affordable housing on such a site. I think that's a disappointment and a retrograde step. Thank you.
Councillor Rubini.
Yes, when I first looked at this, I was a little bit concerned about the number of bedrooms in the housing, because they all seem fairly large. However, the officer has explained that, and it would seem that there is another site coming on that will have a reduced number of bedrooms, and so there is going to be some sort of balance. I agree with the affordable balance. Unfortunately, we are getting more and more housing on that 5 or 6, even 7, with no affordable housings on site. So we're gradually getting large houses built at large prices. However, in retrospect, listening to the other councillors, I think I agree that this is a site that could be developed, and it would seem to me that it does fit in with the surrounds in that particular area where most of the housing is big anyway. So I think it fits in, and I would see this as a proper development.
Thank you, councillor Rubini. Do we have any other speakers? Councillor Gale.
Sorry, I was just trying to have a count up of how many people would be accommodated within that area. And I make it about 40 people living within that little area, which if they all grow up old enough to drive cars, you could have 40 vehicles in there. How many parking spaces are there actually on site? Can I just ask that as a first question?
So there's 15 parking spaces on site, which is compliant with council guidelines on any properties above 3+ dwelling units. Obviously, yeah, some of the units there's a 5-bed unit, well, 2 5-bed units, 1 4-bed, and 2 3-beds. Whether they'll be occupied 2 persons in each of those 5-bed rooms could happen, but at the end of the day, they are compliant with policy in terms of parking provision.
Thank you for that. Is there any way a condition can be put on this to stop cars from that development being parked outside of the development? Because that's something we see a lot of, especially when we're seeing infill on larger properties. The cars that belong to the houses end up outside of everybody else's properties or just in the roads. Is there anything we can do to restrict them leaving their vehicles elsewhere? Because we do find that these vehicles just migrate all the way around where they should be. And I think that's going to be a problem. The other question was, I see that the water company have just no comment. Have they just not responded, or did they respond and say they've no bother with it? Or
If I maybe come in on the point about the parking, and Sam can come in to confirm the water company. So in terms of parking, we can only control what's within the red edged area. So we can't do anything to stop parking on a public highway. The county could choose to put yellow lines down and enforce those yellow lines, but it is outside sort of our power as the planning authority in the context of this application to control parking outside the site.
In terms of the water company, we consult all statutory suppliers in the borough. Thames Water chose not to comment, but they have been consulted.
sorry, Sam, is it Thames Water or Southern Water? Because I think in the papers it says Southern.
So Southern Water is were also consulted. They've made, I believe, a no comment response. Thames Water have just not commented at all. They haven't responded to our consultation.
Okay. Cranley's a problem with water, so I was just thinking, yeah, thank you.
Any other speakers? In that case, we'll move to the recommendation, which is a relatively short one, that subject to conditions 1 to 18 and informatives 1 to 7, permission be granted. Members, please vote for the recommendation using the console in front of you. We have 10 in favour and 1 against, so that recommendation is carried and permission is granted. I suggest we have a short 2-minute recess while members of the public make their way. Thank you. We're ready to move on. So we'll move to item 8.3, which is WA 2025-0078, land at 21 Bat and Wicket Lane, Farnham, for the erection of a boundary fence and gate with associated works following removal of an existing fence. This is a retrospective planning application and is going to be presented by the officer Nito Joy.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. It's a retrospective application for a boundary fence and with associated works following removal of an existing fence. The application is referred to the Planning Committee due to the number of letters in support, 20 letters, contrary to the Planning Officer's recommendation. The site is located towards the west of Ball and Wicket Lane. The application site comprises a 2-story detached dwelling. The area is rural in character and the site's terrain slopes down towards the southeast. The slide illustrates the existing and proposed block plans. The application seeks retrospective permission to retain a fence along the southeastern elevation. The photographs show various views of the fence along Ball and Wicket Lane. The 1.8-meter fence panels are positioned above a 1-meter high napped flint wall, resulting in a total height approximately 2.8 meters. This slide displays photographs of the surrounding street scene. The area is characterized by its verdant and well-landscaped setting. Majority of the dwellings along the Ball and Wicket Lane comprise of lower fences with thick and mature vegetation, which gives the street scene a green and verdant appearance throughout. A photographic comparison between number 21, the application site, and the neighbor number 22, Ball and Wicket Lane. These photographs are sourced from Google Street Views dated August 2023. The photographs show the older fence, which was removed and replaced by a 2.8-meter fence wall. This detail illustrates the southwestern elevation along Ball and Wicket Lane. As previously mentioned, the 1.8-meter fence panels are positioned above a 1-meter napped flint wall, resulting a total height of 2.8 meters. No additional information regarding landscaping has been submitted as part of this application. So the main matters for consideration, one is the impact on highways. Surrey County Council's Transport Development team were consulted for a view on the potential safety implications of the fence. The highways officer has provided comments following a site visit. The boundary fence severely obstructs the available level of visibility from both the existing driveway and the new widened access onto Ball and Wicket Lane. This increases the likelihood of conflict between vehicles emerging from the site accesses and vehicles traveling along Ball and Wicket Lane, which would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, contrary to Section 9 of the NPPF and Policy DM9 of Waverley Local Plan Part 2. The second reason for refusal would be impact on design and visual amenity. Fence has not retained and reinforced the traditional boundary treatment. The retrospective development does not respond effectively to its surrounding and does not reflect or reinforce the local distinctiveness of the character of the area. As such, the application is contrary to policies FNP 1, FNP 16 of the Farnham Neighbourhood Local Plan and policy DM4 of the Waverley Local Plan Part 2. Therefore, officers conclude that the application is recommended for refusal for the above mentioned reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Nito. We have 3 speakers on this application. The first is Mr. Alan Klein.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for the opportunity to summarise and represent the views of the objections to the proposal at 21 Ball and Wicket Lane, Farnham. There has been a considerable number of comments and feedback on this application with various points, perspectives and priorities that people want to get across. However, in this response, we have no need nor intention to rehearse the to and fro and deep dive into the detail of the for and against, rather to focus on the facts. This application is referred to in the Planning Committee due to the number of letters of support, 20, contrary to the Waverley Borough Council Planning Officer's recommendation. Representations of 9 letters have been received raising objection on the following grounds. Every one of the 9 live on the lane and close to number 21, so passing on a daily basis. These headlines include extremely hazardous, encroachment, restrict light, restricting view, dangerous and difficult to see traffic, exceeding regulation height, extension of the boundary, not keeping in character of the lane, and CCTV camera mounted on the height of the new fence. 20 letters have been received expressing support, again for the following reasons headlines. However, it's worth noting that 12 supports don't reside on the lane. 2 couples who do support do live on the lane, and the applicant and his wife made 4 comments in support. Those headlines include prevent obstruction of the view of traffic, fence is a lot safer, easier to view traffic approaching, considerable improvement, fence is of a very high standard and looks great, easy navigation along the road. The key consideration is that we, the objectors, all live close to the property and we're all residents on Ball and Wicket Lane. So we are the people most impacted on a daily basis. We are lay people, not experts in the niceties of planning legislation, yet we concur with both the Waverley Borough Council Planning Officer as well as Surrey County Council Highways, the objection and recommended refusal of the retrospective application in its current format. The Waverley Borough Council Planning Committee, in your informed decision-making today, therefore would be minded that to agree to grant the current retrospective proposal would be going against your own officer and partner organisation advice, thus potentially leaving the organisation open to reputational damage and future potential litigation should a serious accident happen in the future, ? Thus, the key issue is safety and mitigation of risk for vehicles emerging from the current site access and vehicles and pedestrians who have no pavement travelling up and down Ballinwicket Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. The second speaker is Mr. Gary Murphy. The microphone's already on. Mr. Murphy, you have 4 minutes from when you start to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am Mr. Murphy, and I want to clarify what I've done and why. Everything I've built has been on my own land, set back from the highway boundary. I sought guidance from Surrey Highways to confirm where that boundary was before starting any work. And they confirmed it was at least 1 metre in, which effectively widened the lane. There were no objections from Surrey Highways at the time. The original hawthorn hedge had been neglected for years. It regularly overgrew, blocking visibility and narrowing the road, sometimes by 1 to 2 metres. This led to visibility issues at the junction and even caused the centre white line to be moved over. I used strong ratchet straps to pull back safely, built a retaining wall and bolted a new fence to it, staying again within my boundary. A fence already existed behind the hedge, but for safety, I chose to bolt it to the wall. I created a new disabled driveway to allow safer access up the drive. The second access is essential for me as I deal with mental health issues, ADHD, and need privacy to feel safe and regulated. Other driveways along this lane have poor visibility. Ours is now vastly improved. If required, I'm willing to install mirrors to further improve visibility for everyone's benefit. The retaining wall is 14 inches thick, and it will be finished with flint knapping, red brick and tile. A sample panel is already up. It's being built properly and with respect to the character of the area. We've made every effort to maintain privacy and safety while improving appearance and access. There's never been any intent to be deceptive or defiant. The hawthorn hedge has suffered from persistent poisoning for years, and it is still ongoing. The fence now helps protect it. We've planted new hawthorn to the north to help restore the habitat and reinstate the boundary line. So this isn't about removal, it's about recovery. We want to let nature heal while maintaining a secure and defined property edge. This work has come at considerable personal cost and was done under the belief that we were within our rights under permitted development. The legislation around fences, walls and ground level is ambiguous at best. It doesn't clearly account for topography or the natural level versus the road level. That said, we are happy to engage with planning despite little willingness so far, and we are open to discussion without admitting fault to reach a reasonable compromise. We only ask to be treated fairly and with the same respect as others. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And thank you, Mr. Murphy. We move to the third speaker, who is a Miss or a Mrs. Claire Smickler, who is online. The same rule applies to you. Claire, you have 4 minutes from when you start to speak.
I think you're muted. No, you're still muted.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I'll start quickly. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. I used to live just up the lane from Mr. Murphy, and I've known him for a long time. Unfortunately, my partner and I were among those who felt pushed out by persistent hostility from certain neighbours. We love the area, but it became untenable. That's why I want to speak in full support of Mr. Murphy and the improvements he's made. What he's built is not just functional, it's beautiful. The fence is neat, well proportioned, and a huge improvement on the messy, overgrown hedge that used to encroach onto the lane. In fact, what Mr. Murphy has done has actually widened the usable width of the road and made things look much better for everyone. What's heartbreaking is that people only seem to complain when the work was nearly done. And this isn't the first time he's been targeted. I've seen how much stress and upset these constant objections have caused him. It's wearing. It affects mental health. And it's especially unfair because other people on this lane have put up fences and walls far closer to the road, and no one says a word. Mr. Murphy generally believed this work was allowed under permitted development. He consulted early, stayed behind the boundary, and has put in a huge amount of money, care, and thought. He's not trying to hide anything. He's trying to do it right. His intentions have been genuine, respectful, and community-minded. He's even gone as far as planting new hawthorns to protect and restore the old hedge, which has been damaged over the years. The new fence helps shield it from further harm. And over time, that boundary will become a blend of natural growth and careful structure, just what this area really needs. It saddens me that Mr. Murphy has faced this kind of resistance, especially when he's created something safer, tidier, and more attractive than many of the other properties on this lane, must I add. I hope you will see that this isn't someone cutting corners or harming the area. It's someone quietly trying to improve it for the long term. Please support him today and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. We now move to our discussion and debate. Do I have a first speaker? Well, I think it was Councillor Keane, closely followed by Councillor Rubini.
And then Hussaini and Spence.
Who was that?
Yeah, Hussaini and Spence.
Councillor Hussaini and Councillor Spence. So, Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. The height of the fence, I'm sure that probably was taken into account by highways as well. Was the applicant made aware of any height restrictions of the fence before he began building it? You know, if he did he speak to the planning department about how high it could go and how far back?
So earlier, the applicant had erected a 2-meter fence wall and without a planning permission. And the enforcement team received complaints, and that's where the enforcement team had to pitch in, and they had advised to reduce the fence height to 1 meter. So the applicant is aware what the height is. Thank you.
Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Along the same lines, you've put on here, obviously at the beginning, that it's a retrospective planning application. So if we go along and say, no, we don't want it, what happens? Does he have to put the hawthorn hedge back? Does the fence have to come down? I'm trying to look at what happens. And I agree about whether he had advice, and I'm concerned on here that the planning enforcement team have not commented at all. And yet I assume that if we are going to refuse, surely that would involve the planning enforcement team to take some action.
So just to confirm the position, I'm not really quite sure why the planning enforcement team were consulted on the application. So if we refuse planning or if the committee refused planning permission this evening, then there would be a planning refusal notice. The case would be referred to the enforcement team and they would then prepare to serve an enforcement notice, and the breach is obviously that it's above a metre high, and the enforcement notice would require the fence to be reduced to a metre in height within a given period. It's usually quite a short period. The minimum period of enforcement notice can require compliance is 28 days.
Yes, if I could just come back quickly. I was a little bit concerned that's what you're going to say, because he's taken out a hawthorn hedge and we are all very much in the favour of wildlife nowadays. I'm surprised that nobody thought to keep the hawthorn hedge in better condition to allow birds and nesting to carry on. So when we enforce, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put the hedge back. It's still going to be a fence there. So that is very unfortunate for the wildlife concerned.
I understand from the applicant that the hawthorn hedge is still there, but it's behind the fence. Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a question as well. In the papers before us on page 67, it says on the Highways Authority said the applicant could overcome their objection if various things were done. What are we to deduce from that statement, the fact that this application is before us, that discussion hasn't happened, has been rejected? What can you advise us, please?
So in terms of the county surveyor's comments, then they're providing helpful advice to the applicant, but obviously this is a retrospective application. So the application has been submitted to regularise what's technically a breach of planning, and therefore they've given the advice, but we're not in a situation where this was an application that we'd seek amendments to, because the work had already been carried out. The nature of the application is different from an application that proposes development, if that makes sense.
I think it does. Thank you. But am I also then to deduce that if we do refuse this, one option, or that remains an option for the applicant to undertake to remove the Highways Authority if nothing objection?
That's correct. The applicant can do those works.
Thank you.
Councillor Hussaini, and then Councillor White.
Hi, I have a question regarding the usable roads, if it's been widened or not following a fence being erected, because there seems to be some disagreement to that question.
So the Highways Authority, they have mentioned in their comments that the boundary fence would obstruct the available level of visibility, both from the existing driveway and the new widened access onto Ball and Wicket Lane. So this increases the likelihood of conflicts between the vehicles accessing the Ball and Wicket Lane. And yes, thus would impact on highway safety.
But is the pedestrian pavement wider now following? Because I imagine a bush would take up much more space over the roads than a fence.
There isn't a pedestrian access,
okay.
it's just the road.
All right, okay. Thanks.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. I know that as planning committee members, we need to read the document and obviously we take very carefully the planning officer's views. And in this case, I totally understand those views and totally agree. I'd also like to think as councillors looking after our community, that we could be in a position to try and find a win-win. And I can only make my own assessment and judgment of this, but I think this particular applicant has completely misread the character of the road. And somebody else said it earlier, that it's very unfortunate that this wasn't reported to the council earlier, and that perhaps some sort of consultation could have taken place and the applicant could have received advice. And I'm sure if he was speaking to a chartered surveyor or indeed an architect, the architect would provide him with that advice regarding the 4-foot height visibility. I mean, and obviously the situation is a refusal, clearly in the situation that we're considering it. But I mean, put it on record, I mean, I would like to suggest to the applicant that if the hawthorn hedge is still there, that he removes the close boarded 1.8 to 0.4 metre height fence and puts a post and rail fence on the same line in front of the hawthorn hedge, and then in fact could put mature planting in to raise, I presume he's looking for more privacy to his property. It seems to be elevated to the road, and perhaps, well, not elevated, but obviously it's falling down. I'm not sure what the levels are the other side, and it's not for me to comment. But anyway, I mean, that could be hopefully a solution and a win-win for the applicant, and obviously to comply. But just my observations. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have a question for Councillor Rivers is champing at the bit, but I'm going to ask the head of planning a question. If this is refused, as is the recommendation, and goes back to enforcement, will enforcement then work with the applicant to give them guidance as to what is allowed?
So yes, members, as you're aware, we do have a local enforcement policy, and that sort of reinforces that we work proactively to try and remedy breaches rather than jump straight in and serve notices. And that's reflective in the number of matters that are resolved without the need to serve enforcement notices. So our team work proactively with residents, and it is the last resort that we'd serve a notice. Obviously, there is advice contained in this report, and if the committee refuse this, it will be passed to enforcement, but there will be discussions with the applicant about whether the breach can be remedied to avoid enforcement action, rather than the next thing that happens tomorrow is we serve an enforcement notice, because that is not the way that team operates, or indeed that our enforcement policy is shaped.
Thank you, Claire, and I think that's the answer most members were looking for, but I'll hand over to Councillor Rivers.
And my query was slightly the opposite of that, was if we were to not accept the refusal, but to agree that this wall can stay, would that then create a precedent, and would that then alter the road even more?
So in answer to that question, I think there are two issues. You've obviously got advice from the county surveyor in terms of the safe, of whether or not the access is safe, and therefore you need to be mindful of that in your decision making. and mindful of the potential of an accident occurring on that road, resulting from vehicles emerging from that access point. So there's one point, and the second point, and to answer sort of more directly the point you've made, Penny, obviously there is an issue around the character of this lane. Members, you've seen the pictures this evening, and it is nice and green and rural in appearance and softened and all the things that maybe we see as characteristic of a lot of lanes across the borough. If you accept something that begins to change that character, then it would be very difficult to resist a similar proposal, because you've already eroded the character of that area in allowing this proposal.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Gale.
Yes, if the committee were of a mind to refuse tonight in line with the officer's recommendation, how long would it take before enforcement could actually go and either discuss with the applicant how he can make this a safer aspect in the road? Because I'm mindful that people have actually said this is a danger. So how long would it take us to do something to actually rectify the safety of the road if we're a mind to use the recommendation there?
So again, in line with our own performance targets, and I think it's 12 working days, but it might be 15, but it's in the region of that there must be an initial site visit and an initial interaction with the property owner. So it would be within 3 working weeks from the date of this meeting.
Any further speakers? Councillor Keane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Rivers has raised a second issue, I think, on whether it's in keeping with the road and its green areas. Is that what you said, Councillor?
My point is that it's not, and therefore it would create a precedent for other people to follow.
Yes, so that is the question I was going to ask. You know, apart from the fact that the fence has been put up and it's far too high, you know, does it accord with the greenness of the area and the landscaping of the area?
So just to respond to that, the advice of officers is that it doesn't, and for that reason we are suggesting 2 reasons for refusal. The first being the highway safety related issue, and the second being the impact on the character of the area.
I think we can move to the recommendation. The recommendation is that permission be refused for the following reasons, and I'll read this as quick as I can. The boundary fence as constructed obstructs the required vehicle intervisibility splays from the site access onto Ball and Wicket Lane, which has an unacceptable impact on highway safety, contrary to the policy DM9 of Waverley Borough's local plan, etc., etc. And number 2, the fence as constructed by reason of its height, proximity to the highway, and prominent corner location represents an unduly prominent and inappropriate element in the street scene and is detrimental to the visual amenity of the surrounding area. I think I've read enough of that recommendation. It's now time for voting. Please remember, if you are voting for refusal, you press the green button. Eight and 2? 9 and 2. We have 9 in favour of the refusal and 2 against. I would say in conclusion to Mr. Murphy, you do have the opportunity to work proactively, as Claire said, with the enforcement team, and I hope that you can come to a conclusion, as Councillor White said, which could be a win-win situation. So there we have it. Thank you. We now move to item 9, applications not subject to public speaking, although in fact we do have one later on that is. But 9.1 is an NMA, non-material amendment, 2025 00917, land at Woodside Park, Caddis Hall Lane, Godalming, which is the amendment to WA 2023-01048 to amend condition 19 with reference to the noise emitted from the air source heat pumps. The officer is Alistair Dejoux, but I believe Sam is taking his place to present this one.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is NMA Woodside Park in Cattishall, south of Cattishall Lane in Godalming. It relates to an amendment of condition 19, which is related to noise levels emitted from air source heat pumps. So you can see there the location plan. The original application was 14 affordable homes in a 3-storey block. It was approved in 2023. Yes, 12 affordable flats, 6 1-bed, 6 2-bed. The site is now up to fit-out stage, and ownership of the property has been transferred to Waverley Borough Council. So that's why this application has come to committee as a council item. Yeah, you have a site section there with the adjacent Sanford Mews. There would be 12 air source heat pumps to serve the 12 residential units. Noise report shows these, they'll be located at ground level, on balconies associated with the proposed dwellings, and also at roof level in the recessed section. There's some photos of the new development with the recently constructed block in the centre there in the backdrop. And here, this is the neighbouring, this is the boundary of the neighbouring property, Rosedale. So I've got a scale up there for you. So the main planning issue is the wording of the condition 19, which currently reads, noise resulting from the use of the air source heat pump shall not exceed a level of 5 decibels below the existing background level when measured according to the British standard at a metre 1 point away to the nearest sensitive properties. The problem with this is the background noise level varies to each locality. And the noise consultants have found, given the edge of settlement site, to comply with this condition, an air source heat pump would have to be 20 decibels. So you can see on that scale, to sort of put that into some perspective on the decibel chart, that would be between rustling leaves and a soft whisper, which would essentially be unachievable. And the rewording of this condition to not exceed 35 decibels would be much more reasonable. As shown in the chart, that would be a sort of typical minimum nighttime level. So yeah, main matters for consideration of this NMA are impact of noise from the air source heat pumps. Environmental Health agree with the findings of the noise impact assessment and do not object to the change of the wording of the condition. As discussed, the current condition as worded is unreasonable, given the very limited level of noise allowance. Yeah, subject to those amended conditions, officers recommend the NMA is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any speakers? I wasn't inviting you, Councillor Spence, but carry on.
Thank you. Just an observation. I think to me, this was a very technical application. Often we get visuals and good visuals. I would just like to ask if it's possible when we have applications of this nature, we have something that was audible so we can actually judge the sound, because frankly, I'm finding it very difficult to assess what was going on, or other than, I think you said, low whisper and rustling leaves. Thank you.
We could, of course, organise a site visit and we could all, but it would probably depend on our hearing abilities. Any other speakers? Well, I think we can move. Which is that subject to amended conditions 1 to 2 and informatives, the non-material amendment is approved. Please vote. That is unanimously carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. We now move to item 9.2 on the agenda, which is WA 2025-0018, land at Burnt Hill Road, Lower Bourne, Farnham, is for the erection of a second-storey extension together with alterations to roof space, including dormers, roof lights, and the raising of roof ridge height to provide habitable accommodation. And I will move now to the case officer, who is certainly not Anna Whitty. Thank you. Hopefully members of the committee are enjoying this as much as we are. I don't really think that deserves a round of applause, but we're grateful nevertheless, Sam. let's just wait for Councillor White to come back. He obviously had to go somewhere urgently.
Sorry, members, just to explain, I'm online and I can't see this report. So we're double checking that the report has been published for 5 working days so that therefore you can consider it this evening. And we're just double checking that before we. Okay, fine. It sounds as if we've taken the report down because we took some photographs down. So this has been published for 5 working days. So we can continue to consider this report this evening.
Thank you. Well, at last, we have a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone, and apologies for the technical problems earlier. So the application at 126 Burnhill Road, Lowbourne, Farnham, it's for the erection of a 2nd-storey extension together with alterations to roof space, including dormers, roof lights, and raising of roof ridge height to provide habitable accommodation. The first slide showed the location plan with the site outlined in red and also an aerial view with the site outlined in blue. We now have the existing floor plans, followed by the proposed ground and first floor plans, and you can clearly see what is proposed shown in colour and what is existing grey. And this is the 2nd floor plan and the roof plan again with the differences. The next slide shows the existing elevations, all 4. And in the proposed elevation, the first slide, the front and the side eastern elevation. And the second slide, the rear elevation and the side western elevation. What is important to note is there is an extant planning permission WA 2022-00322, which was granted in June 2022 and partially implemented. The single-storey element, the single-storey extension has been implemented. However, the first floor extension to the front has not yet been implemented. This is a comparison between the extant permission and the proposal for consideration under this application, which we can see they are very similar. This is the single story rear extension that has been implemented. It has been constructed some 20 centimeters higher than the approved plans, and this permission also seeks to regularize the height of that extension. The next slide shows the proposed street scene, which clearly shows the gradual increase in roof height from the application to the east, the application side, and the application to the west. There's a clear gradual increase in roof height, which is also responding to the difference in in land levels, which clearly rise from the east to the west. This proposed street scene drawing shows that the application site is set behind its immediately neighboring properties to the east and to the west. And finally, there is a plan showing the proposed skylight. 3 parking spaces will be retained, and there's also some proposed soft landscaping. Moving to the photographs, the application side is indicated by the red arrow, and we've got the application side and the dwelling to the west, which can clearly see even behind those trees that it's significantly larger and higher than the application side. The next slide also shows the application side and its neighbor to the west on higher ground levels and higher than the application side. The next slide shows the neighbor to the east and the relationship between the two dwellings, and you can see the single story rear extension that has been built under the extant permission. This is a view from the rear of the application side towards the rear garden, which is a large rear garden, well screened by mature vegetation. Therefore, there'll be no impact to the property to the rear of the application side. Moving to the neighbor to the east, this is a photograph showing that property has some windows that look directly towards the application side. Most of them are non-habitable windows, or they are windows which are they are secondary source of light, so they have other windows to provide light to that room. This picture shows the outlined in red the window of a ground floor secondary reception room that looks towards the application side. And the second picture shows the actual view from inside that room towards the application side, so they can see part of the extension, and the proposal will basically infill this area here. Now, what is important to note is that this room is already dark due to the limited light, due to this orientation towards the application side, but we have got an extant planning permission, as shown again in the comparison side, and the difference between the extant planning permission and the proposal under this application, it's not dissimilar. So it will not result, excuse me, in loss of light over and above what the extant permission that has been approved would do. Also to note is the single story extension, and the consent is for dark timber cladding, but this application seeks to remove the dark timber cladding and replace it with off-white render, which will be more in keeping with the character of the area and also will maximize the light. It is also proposed to change the front and side elevation towards the neighbor to the east of the existing rear extension from black cladding to off-white render. The main matters for consideration are the planning history, the extant planning permission for extensions, which is a material planning consideration, the design, visual amenity and character of the area, residential amenity, impact on light and privacy. Recommendation, the report identifies the application will be in accordance with the relevant development plan policies. Officers therefore recommend that, subject to condition, the proposal is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We do have a speaker. it is Councillor Carol Coburn who actually called this application into the committee. I think mainly to do with neighbours' amenity. Are you there, Councillor Coburn?
I am. Can you hear me? Oh. Can anybody hear me?
Oh, I beg your pardon. You'll have to excuse me, Councillor Coburn. I've omitted the we actually have two speakers in front of you in the queue. If you can bear with us a little bit longer. We have one speaker. The first speaker is Sophie Wright. You have 4 minutes when you turn your microphone on and start to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. My name is Sophie. I live at 128 directly next door to the applicant. I've lived here for over 12 years with my children. I want to be clear that I am not here to prevent any sort of development at all. You know, I fully support people improving their homes, but I want to ensure that it's both fair and thoughtful. And doesn't overly impact and devastate our home or way of life to benefit another. The application in question follows the 2022 approval, now partially built, that we spoke about earlier, which has already had a severe and negative impact on us, particularly the loss of the light to 3 main used rooms. I believe this approval was never properly assessed in terms of our amenity. The report for the 2022 approval makes absolutely no mention on our impacted windows. These are habitable rooms, a bedroom, office, and a playroom. It simply states no negative impact on neighbours at amenity 128. Since that build, our heating use has increased by 20%, some 4,300 kilowatt hours per annum. The light diffusing conservatory, which had a pitched roof outlook, has been replaced by approximately 5.3 metre high black wall, which now is just below our first floor windows. This extension is also 20 centimetres higher than approved and extending over the boundary by a few centimetres. A parapet was deliberately added after approval and not a calculation error. That increase was never assessed and should not be waved through after the fact. If a withdrawn 2024 application was deemed significantly impactful by officers, but now the ridge height being 15% lower is agreeable, I would ask why we are now considering approving a 20 centimetre increase without proper assessments. Now, this application seeks to go even further, adding a second floor, as well as the cat slide roof and the rear extension. That will mean a complete loss of direct sunlight to our playroom, a room that once got 4 hours of direct sun. It will also bring new windows. Those windows will look both within our home, inside our glass roof lights, inside our rear living room, and also over our entirely private, currently sunny garden. Our privacy will be permanently lost, and our home, once bright, warm and open, feels like it's going to become a cold, dark tunnel and completely overshadowed on the southwest side, which should be sunny. This is impacting 6 rooms, 3 habitable, 7 windows. The recommendation for approval hinges on 2 things, which I believe are fundamentally flawed. That only a minor further loss of light occurs because the 2022 ex-ante approval has already caused the damage. However, there was apparently no impact caused to our amenity in the 2022 approval officer's report. But if that approval was never properly assessed, then this logic compounds harm and feels completely unjust. Secondly, that rear extension is hidden from public view. It is not. When it was first built, several neighbours stopped in the street and asked how it was ever approved. The scale and design are jarring and absolutely affects the public realm. Crucially, I believe there's a legal dimension to consider. Recent rulings, McLennan versus Medway, have shown that climate impact and the loss of sunlight are now material planning concerns. Subject to various different legal rulings like this, paragraph 163 was recently updated in the National Planning Policy Framework to make this clear. The need to mitigate and adapt climate change should also be considered in preparing and assessing planning applications, taking into account the full range of potential climate change impacts. This means that we need to not only look at what's being built, but also the downstream impacts, what's being lost. Passive heating, daylight, ultimately the health and livability of our existing homes, causing increased use in fossil fuels, as the case with our property. Our home is Victorian. It's built with lime mortar, porous bricks, and it needs air and light to stay sound, overshadowing not only impacts how we live, but also how our building survives. In closing, I would please ask you not to approve this application as it currently stands. Please reject the retrospective approval of the 20 centimetre height increase. And please, as per frequent requests, please could we have a full independent light and amenity assessment that predates that 2022 application in order to make right the prior lack of amenity assessment. Moving forward from that, I would be happy to work with the neighbours, considering the cumulative impact both on climate, privacy and the character of the neighbourhood, to find a plan that works for us all. I thank you for your time and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your words there. I'm now going to move to the head of planning, who has uncovered an unfortunate situation that may require deferral. Over to you, Claire.
So, members, the speaker has just made reference to a 2024 application. That application is not referred to in this committee report, and it is material consideration. So, members, I'm going to request that this application is deferred. Apologising to both the speakers, Councillor Coburn online, and the applicants, because it's really important that the report is correct and that you consider everything this evening, and this report doesn't reference the planning application that's been referenced by the speaker.
Thank you, Claire. I think that's the head of planning holding up a white flag.
So can I suggest, rather than having discussions now about this, that any discussion is taken offline following this meeting?
So there we have it. It's obviously best to get these things 100% correct. And it's unfortunate that this has happened, but it's better to defer it. So I'll move now to the next, and I believe a final application for this evening, which is item 9.3, WA 2025-00815, land at Farnham Sports Centre, Dogflood Way, Farnham. This is for the erection of a planter room with mounted evaporator deck and installation of air source heat pumps with associated fencing. And it's over to Dana again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application has been referred to Planning Committee due to the applicant being Waverley Borough Council. This is the location of the site, which is to the rear of the Farnham Sports Centre, and an aerial view showing the location of the application site in blue. The next slide shows the existing and the proposed site plan. So this is the proposed planned room located to the rear of the Farnham Leisure Centre. And this is an elevation, the rear elevation existing and proposed, again showing the planned room at the rear of the leisure centre. The next slide shows the view from the side. This is existing and proposed, indicated by the red arrow. And we now have an illustrative plan, again showing the location of the proposed plant. This is a photograph that indicates where the proposed plant is going to go in the car park area of the leisure centre, and another one showing the existing side elevation, and again where the plant is going to be located. It is considered that the proposal would fully accord with the development plan, being of an acceptable design that would not result in harm to the character of the host building, the character of the larger area, and the amenities of the occupier of the neighbouring properties. A sound impact assessment was submitted in support of the application, and the council's environmental health officer was consulted. No objections was raised, and no conditions were necessary. Further, the proposal will have an acceptable impact on highways and parking, and there will be no impact on biodiversity. Most importantly, the proposal will be highly sustainable by completely removing the leisure centre's need for fossil fuel heating and therefore future-proofing the building. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. The main matters for consideration are the principle of development, the design and impact on the visual amenity, the impact on residential amenity, parking and highways, and sustainability. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dana. Do we have any speakers? Do we have anybody wanting to know what an evaporator deck is? Or is there anybody in the house that can explain what it does? Any speakers? What? I'm disappointed. But thank you for not speaking. I mean, I'll move to the recommendation now. The recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 to 3, an informative permission is granted. Please vote with your council now.
Unanimous.
That is unanimous. And at 31 minutes past 9, this meeting is closed. Thank you.